So it went very sideways into we feel more like victims, and this is all just window dressing and lip service. You've already got it all figured out. So we had this huge pushback on acceptance, and we assumed the acceptance was already there. And where it went wrong was misreading the style of what most of those people in that room, particularly related to their job of underwriting, was they wanted detail.
Welcome back and welcome to the Aligned to Success podcast. I'm your host, Amoy Van Loo, founder and CEO of Aligned to Success Limited. And today I'm excited to dive into a powerful conversation about communication styles and how leaders can get their message across so that every employee truly hears and understands it. Today, joining me, we have another fantastic guest, and his name is Dave Soock. Dave is a change management professional with over 30 years of experience helping organizations and leaders succeed across industries, including finance, retail, high tech, manufacturing, and more. Dave has led major transformation projects, coached executives, and developed his own change methodology, the U Curve, which blends behavioral science with practical tools for navigating organizational change. This particular episode is for leaders, professionals, and anyone who has ever struggled with the gap between what they meant to say and what was actually heard. So, with that, I want to warmly welcome Dave into our studio. Dave, welcome to the podcast. It's a pleasure to have you here. Um, and just
Oh,
to get
hi, Amoy. Yes, thanks
hi,
for
hi,
thanks for
Dave.
having me. I'm excited. Yeah.
Absolutely. So glad you're excited, and I know our audience is. So, could you start by telling us a bit about your journey and what first drew you to the world of leadership and communication?
Well, that's a long journey. I actually started my early career in the training and development world and in the corporate side. Yeah, I did a little bit of college teaching, but then most of my career has been from the training perspective in the corporate world. And that kind of led me into more leadership training, coaching of leaders, and got involved with some large scale projects. And the training kind of transformed into more change management. It was about not just about making sure people understood or had the skills or had the cognitive capabilities to do their jobs better, but was more about helping prepare the environment for them to learn. And around that was a big component about change management. And one piece of that, of course, is communicating, and particularly with large-scale change projects, communicating the change so that people understood it as well as bought into it. So they can't buy into something that's affecting them in terms of a large-scale software implementation or merger, whatever it might be, unless they get the message. So that was a real, I guess, sea change shift in my focus of my career into from teaching people how to do things differently to change management, which is accepting and thriving in large-scale changes that they were experiencing in their work lives. That led me to, I did a lot of hiring and talent management and coaching, and started using some tools around that, particularly around the personal styles or behavioral style world, and along with learning a lot about the different change management methodologies, and through conversations with other leaders and other professionals, HR and change professionals, came up with this light bulb that said, well, you have to combine the two things together in order for people to be able to thrive in that intense change environment. And that's what led me to developing this thing called the U curve that marries the behavioral sciences with and personal style tools with helping people through change and that change curve that they go through.
Mhm. Great, great. Thanks so much for that, Dave. I mean, that journey, as you did say, is long, but long and very rich in a lot of experience, and I know you have been able to help so many people along the way. So thanks for sharing that background. But I also know that our listeners are eager to hear and learn some more about your experiences specifically. So what I want to do now is potentially get into a few questions, so I'll just jump into the first one. And it's about when in your career would you say did you first realize that the way you communicated wasn't always the way people understood? And then the second part of that is what tipped you off? Was it the tone? Was it the timing? Was it the channel? Or personality style mismatches?
Sure. I assume you want me to draw from my work life experience, because of course some of the first miscommunications are, as a parent and in a relationship, but we'll put those aside. Everybody's had those.
Yes.
But in the but in the work world, gosh, I guess it was way back, um, uh, when I was still in the training sector, and we were conducting classroom training on computer technology, and it was specifically computer assisted drafting or CAD systems, and I was working for a engineering consulting company that was training their clients on how to use this fancy new software. And we had classrooms of 10 to 15 people, sometimes as many as 20. And I distinctly remember one particular scenario. It was with a government agency, and I won't say which, up in Canada. And I was up there at the front of the room with my flip charts and whiteboard markers and my PowerPoint presentations and demonstrating things, and I realized that um, the instructions that I was giving for training people on how to do a certain portion of teaching them certain features of the software, I thought it was crystal clear. It was an exercise, and they had to manipulate a particular um, demonstration file, and do some tasks with it. And I thought, I had thought this out, and it was going to be, and I was already 3 steps ahead in what I was going to teach and how I was going to help them get to the next task. And chaos ensued. People were confused. People were getting frustrated. They were going off on tangents. And I realized that me just standing at the front of the room, describing to them, okay, now I want you to open this file, and I want you to, insert a particular legend into the drawing that we were doing. And people were confused. They couldn't find what they were looking for. And then I realized that I couldn't just tell them, I couldn't just put up bullet points of what I wanted them to do, that some people needed more detail, for example. Some people, instead of hearing me say it, wanted to have it written in front of them, not just up on a whiteboard. They wanted to be able to look down at their own pace and read detailed instructions. So that was one of those backpedal moments where I realized that you have to have different ways of communicating the same thing, because different people have different needs in terms of their communication style and how they process information.
That's an absolutely excellent point. And for leaders, you have to understand that each person in the room is different, and therefore you have to have different ways of reaching them, whether or not you have audio, whether or not it's a show and tell, whether or not it's an interactive perspective on how you deliver this particular information. So that's really great. So that's for the leaders. But we always say the leaders should know this is what they need to do. What would you say about what does the employee need to come into a session like that? What sort of mindset the employee should come into a session like that with? Because it's not always the leaders need to know that I need to bring a whiteboard, I need to do a PowerPoint presentation. But what does the employee need to do, Dave?
Well, anytime we talk about communication, I think a lot of people, particularly leaders, get wrapped up in what am I telling? What am I doing? Or when even when employees and team members, they're more interested in I have to get my message across. It's all about what they're already thinking about what they're saying, what going to say, and communication. In fact, stating the obvious is it's a two-way interactive process. It's not just about spewing what the points that you want to make. Before you can get your point across, you need to listen to the context of the conversation, who you're talking to, and focus less on yourself and more about the person that you're trying to get the message to, right? So it's not just about you. It's not about you. It's about the other person. So that, whether it's a leader or a team member, when you're thinking about communicating something, you got to think in terms of the receiver of the information much more than yourself as the giver of information.
Great. That's an excellent nugget again. It's when you're communicating with someone else, it's not about you, it's about the other person, and it's about how they're going to receive the information, how they're feeling actually when they're receiving the information. What is this information doing to them as opposed to what the information is doing to you or for you? So it's putting yourself in the seat of the person receiving the information as opposed to what you're doing. And this applies to, as you said it applies to both, to in fact anyone who is sharing information and anyone who is sharing communication.
Yeah. It's whether it's a leader, a team member, a colleague, everybody. It doesn't matter about level or title or role. We're all communicating as human beings. Start there. Let's put all the other stuff aside. And human beings are complicated and unique, and you have to think in those terms when you're trying to get a point or a message across.
Yeah. And one of the things that I have recognized in my journey with communication is what I call the power. I think we may have talked about this before, Dave, but for me, it's called the power of the pause. So after you have communicated, you do have to pause to allow someone else now to either provide you with feedback or questions, because sometimes we start communicating and we start asking and answering the questions, and we don't give the opportunity to the other person who is listening to provide their feedback and to provide their thoughts. So the power of the pause is something that I use and I share widely when you're doing communication. Pause after you're finished and allow the other person to weigh in on what they have to say. So, Dave, I'm pausing for a moment.
So I've done a lot of facilitating around something called self-talk. And I go through a little exercise with participants, and I go around the room and I ask them, so on average, how many words per minute do you think someone speaks? And people will guess 30, 400. Everybody has their own perception. And then I say, well, before I reveal, I say, okay, so how, on average, how many words per minute can a person process?
Right.
And it turns out, based on scientific studies and behavioral studies, that the average person, if you're not an auctioneer, the average person talks at about 125 words per minute. But the average person can actually process more than twice that, almost 300 words per minute. So what that means is, and this is where the power of the pause comes in, is that people have a lot of other things going on in their head as they're listening to you.
Yes.
So they're processing, well, what am I going to have for lunch? And gee, it's kind of hot in this room. And oh, she just made a very interesting point about that. But all of that stuff's rattling around in their heads. And by pausing, you get their attention and allow them to refocus and allow that extra cognitive processing power time to sink in, and how am I going to respond and to what I just heard or saw or was communicated to me, right? Was this a good thing? Did it make me feel bad? Did it make me feel good? Did it confuse me? Did it make me happy? Did it frustrate me? All of those things have to coalesce before someone gives a proper response, or gives can process the information and decide whether or not I need to do a follow-up question. I can respond directly. I need to think about it because you've asked me for an example, whatever it might be. So it's that difference in processing time. Some might call it, the bees inside your head need to land back at the hive before you can get the honey out, right?
Yeah. As you said that, I had this other thought on another topic that I am passionate about, and you will tell me whether this is true or not. But statistics have said that it sometimes takes a person, they need to hear something about 7 to 10 times before it actually resonates in their mind, or in their consciousness. From your perspective, is there's any merit to that? What are your thoughts on that, Dave?
Well, I think it's totally valid. Whether the number is 7 or 10, yet you can find different studies and different perspectives. But I look at not just corporate or leadership perspective, but look at advertising. When you see an advertisement on your screen or hear it on the radio, look at how many times that tagline, that number to call, who the person is, what the product name is. Effective advertising has adopted this and knows this, and has been using it for decades and decades. So there's a lot of merit to it, that if you want to get your message across, repeat. And I would add, it's not just repeat, but it's repeat through different channels and in different ways. And then that really cements it for people.
Yeah, and I guess that repeating it in different channels and different ways links back to your thought on people receive, and they receive information differently. So someone might hear a radio advertisement, or they might hear something that you're trying to train, but if they see it, someone else who sees it, they're going to receive it differently. So using multiple channels is important when you're trying to get messages across, especially key and critical messages in an organization.
Everybody talks about preferred communication styles for individuals.
Yes.
And it's not a compartmentalized either or. It's an and a spectrum. So if my natural or preferred communication style is visual, that doesn't mean that I'm not going to get a message if I hear it, or if I have to work with it kinesthetically. it just means that the more you appeal to my preferred style, the faster I will get the message, understand it, and adopt it. But it doesn't mean that you only use one channel with any particular person. It's just that particular style is more efficient and more effective. But multiple channels does still work.
Yeah. That leads me in. So that insightful thought leads me into this next question, which I know you will elaborate on. So when leading people with different communication styles, what does effective communication actually look like?
Well, I'll circle back in several aspects, right? I think if I hear what you're saying is, how do you measure communication success as a leader?
Yeah.
And
Considering different communication styles.
correct, correct. So it's obviously I'll go back to different people have different styles, so success is going to be different for each of them, right? But this idea that communication is two-way. It's a process, not an outcome. So the way I measure success is as much, not more, as much about the process that was used versus the outcome. So was the process flexible enough, diverse enough in terms of tone and style and methodology and channel to appeal to a wide variety of people? That's the first criteria. Second is, of course, outcome. Did you get your message across? Did people understand it? Did they respond the way you maybe wanted them to? Did you learn something in the process as the purveyor of that information? I mean, that's another criteria for success as well. It's not just about you as the communicator. It's about the other person too, and you receiving information back based on feedback from what you communicated. That's a criteria that is essential. If it's all just flowing one way and you've got smiling, nodding people saying okay, 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 that's not success. That's not success. If dialogue ensues, feedback happens, that to me is a key criteria of success from a process perspective, and it allows you to assess that level of understanding, that level of acceptance of the points and messages that you're trying to get across.
Great. So I'm taking away dialogue and feedback coming out from a session. I mean, when you have that dialogue and you have that feedback coming out from a session with your team members, there is some level of success. We can read that the program or the interaction or the engagement has been successful in some form. And the more dialogue, obviously, and the more feedback and questions, I think we can reach it as more successful. Dave, I know that UCurve is a product that you built, and I'd like to probably, and I know this, we don't have the time to go through UCurve in its entirety, but I do want to ask you a question about reading someone's style. So how would you read someone's style? What tips can you give our audience in terms of reading someone's style so that they can be better prepared to communicate?
That's easy. No, it's not easy. There is no one magic, simple, if you just do X, Y, Z, you'll be able to read somebody's style. But there are, I'll call it speed reading little hints that can give you inkling and that you can explore and validate. So mannerisms are a big thing. The language that people use is another big thing. So let me back up. So mannerisms. So people that tend to want individual communication versus large scale town hall meetings, for example.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So they are going to be the people that really will want maybe more written communication,
Mm-hmm.
or they will tell you as part of a town hall meeting, well, maybe we can talk about this later, or can I come see you after this? So that, I mean, that's a good indication that that's somebody that prefers one-on-one, doesn't like crowds, doesn't like to be in the spotlight, for example.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Um, the other is the some of the language that people use in, for the most part, if people are talking about, well, what does this mean for us, and how are we going to, and what does the organization as a whole? So if they're talking in terms of we versus, well, but I don't understand what you just said, or this isn't something that I buy into. So if they're
Right.
we versus me language, that again tells me that they are they more team oriented people, or do they care about things that happen to the group, or the status of the group, or the well-being of a group, whether that's their own their colleagues, personal friends, or their work team, or their department, it doesn't matter, versus people that are more interested in how does this affect me and I don't understand. And it's not judgment, it's more style. So it's not
Right.
about whether you're selfish or caring or whatever. That is not what I'm saying. I'm saying it's people think differently in terms of their perspective. So
Mm-hmm.
if you hear language around me versus we, you need to phrase the benefits and the impacts around that in more of an individual perspective versus the team or organization perspective. So those are just a couple. Um,
Right.
Language and behaviors.
So, so Dave, I always hear this particular one. Introverts really don't have anything to say, and I just, I mean, they're just like a waste of time in a meeting, and these extroverts just have all the answers. Um, Tell us a little bit, and tell our audience, how can we work to communicate with, and how can we get the best out of introverts and extroverts? Because I think they both have value. Share with us.
Well, so I totally agree, and that comes back to that we versus me style, and just how people process the world or want to be in the world. And some people draw energy from others around them. So their idea of, for example, their idea of relaxing or recharging their batteries is going out dancing, or having a bunch of friends over. Whereas there are other people that, in order to recharge, they want to just, I want to go canoe on a lake by myself, or I want to just sit and read a book. So how they draw energy, whether externally or internally, is a big introvert versus extrovert. That's kind of the analogy. And the extroverts, for the most part, and again, don't want to overgeneralize,
Mm-hmm.
they can provide a lot of that energy to the group, and quite often will provide a unique perspective, out of the box perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas introverts are much more thinking and processing methodically, can provide those unconsidered perspectives versus the wild and crazy ones, but the devil in the details people.
Yes.
So those are the advantages and merit that each of those kinds of styles bring to a communication interaction.
Yeah.
And you have to respect both of those. And as a leader, facilitating a group that has a mix of those can be very challenging. The person that sits at the back of the room quietly, never, provides feedback, never speaks up, you may be missing deep insights around details that the extrovert takes over the room and guides the energy in a very particular direction based on their own bias or perspective. You have to make sure you're it sounds cliche, but literally reading the room.
No, that's
So
exactly
you
it.
have to draw one out and shut one down.
That's exactly it. Because I mean, and I think as we both agreed, there is merit and there's value. More particularly, there is value in both of those types of personalities and styles, and you want to ensure that you leverage both the strategic thinker and the person who is going to come with the out of the box. They're always going to have an idea, and you would always have to be shortlisting which idea we're going to go with first, and the thinker is going to probably create the business plan, and you want both of them to come together. So from a communication perspective, leaders need to ensure that they tap into those persons and ensure that their communication skills are geared and ready to be able to leverage the communication styles that an introvert and an extrovert will give off in a meeting. Yeah.
Definitely.
Thanks so much.
Yes.
Thanks so much for that, Dave. I have another interesting question for you, and that is, can you share a time when poor communication led to confusion, disengagement, or even failure? Like which style mismatches were at play, and how did you repair the trust and reset the message?
Yeah, I did refer back to early in my career around the training example, which was a good one. But there was a situation. You talk about introverts and extroverts. I went into the consulting world and was working for a client. They were introducing, it was an insurance company, and they were introducing a new software for every aspect of their business, from claims to financial to customer service software. All of it was being replaced. So it was a huge upheaval. So we had a particular situation where the underwriters had to use much more automation in how they processed their claims and underwrote the claims. And they were very much used to talking individually, but free form, right? They had guidelines of what they were looking for when they were interacting with clients around underwriting policies. But now they were being much more scripted and channeled guided in their conversations. So we had to communicate and, in effect, sell this idea of how it was going to be better for them, because there was more automation of some of the more routine aspects of what they were doing. So they were looking more at exception handling versus the transactional side of the underwriting process.
Right.
So we got the underwriters together. We're going to have this working session with them, and we had a bit of a workshop prepared for them to do some testing of scripts and analyzing of the scripts that were going to be developed for some of the more routine and automated portions. So we thought, okay, this is great. We're going to be engaging them. They're going to have input into how they're shaping things. But what we did was we had at that time, if I recall correctly, there were 10. I think it was actually 12 underwriters that we were using in this workshop. So we brought them all in. We broke them up into groups of four, three groups of four. So we had different scripts that they had to go through, and what they called use cases that they had to come up with and develop. And we were as the facilitators. I was more the, I'll call it the facilitator versus the technical expert. I mean, I didn't know that much about insurance underwriting or the software itself, but I was there more to guide the process. So we had put together these very, how shall I put it? They were more notional and directional use cases and scenarios that we wanted them to develop and flesh out and, have them buy into the process. Well, underwriters tend to be very detail-oriented people.
Correct.
They want to know A before B before C before D. Right? So we put the instruction sets together, the use cases, and we said, okay, off you go and do this. And it kind of started out okay. They were, chatting amongst each other. And then we got a lot of questions, and there was a little bit of, how should I put it? As the questions began to flow, it switched more from, I don't understand this, to why are you doing this to us? So it went very sideways into we feel more like victims, and this is all just window dressing and lip service. You've already got it all figured out. So we had this huge pushback on acceptance, and we assumed the acceptance was already there. And where it went wrong was misreading the style of what most of those people in that room, particularly related to their job of underwriting, was they wanted detail. Mm-hmm. We didn't give them detail. We gave them free form, vague direction. So as a result, it ended up in very much, how shall I put it, a resistance workshop versus, developing these use cases. So we kind of paused the activity of it all, and we, in the moment, we had to kind of backstep and backpedal into, okay, here's how this is going to help your careers. Here's how it's going to make you more efficient. Here's how it's removing the boring parts of the job that you do. So we really had to reset what that workshop was about to buy-in versus developing, in data sets for the software around these use cases. So that's a great classic example of not reading what the communication needs are for a particular person, or in this case, a particular group, which was be creative versus giving them detail.
Right. So it sounds as though, if I'm to recap, and you can say, it sounds as though you needed to better understand the styles of the people in that room, their personality styles, because if you had a better understanding of the personality styles, which is detail oriented, facts and figures, A, B, then C, not A or Z, then the communication would have been different. The resistance would have been lower, and potentially the message that you had planned would have been a little more successful. So it reinforces that very key thing and very key point of understanding the personalities that you're communicating to. It's important to understand the personality styles that you're communicating to, so that you could target and specifically target those messages and the different channels that you're going to use to ensure that you actually reach the people that's sitting in front of you, whether it's one person, two persons, or if it's a town hall meeting. Yeah?
Correct. Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Great. So just on a wrap up, we're almost to the end. I'm sorry about that. Where did time run away from us? But this is like our wrap up question. So this is for if every leader is listening, and we have lots of leaders that are listening to our podcast today, and if every leader is listening could make one change tomorrow to improve message uptake across styles, what would you say that would be, Dave, and how can they measure if it's working?
Let me address the first part, which is what's the one thing, and forgive me for repeating it. It's not about you, it's about them. So it's not what you're going to say, it's how are they going to listen or receive. So that should, if that's the only thing that leaders take away from this, that is a very good nugget. That
Great.
it's not about you, it's about the person or people that you're communicating to. So always approach it from that perspective, not just in terms of the message itself, but also the process and the preferences of the person. And if you can pick up on some of those speed reading techniques that I mentioned earlier to determine what someone is going to respond to best, then pick up on that. And there's no one silver bullet in terms of communication style. It's always multiple. It's always multiple.
So you have to be flexible in that process. It's not about you; it's about them, and be flexible in that process. How would they measure that success? How would they measure that they're being successful?
Well, a quick measure is how much feedback are you getting from the person receiving the message. That says it all, really. And all feedback is good feedback. So it's not a question of whether they're pushing back or complimenting or inquiring or asking for more detail or asking for what the next steps are. That part of it's not important. It's, are they engaged? Like, did you get something back from them? Was it one way? If it's entirely one way, as I call it with the Muppet nods, yes, boss, yes, yeah, that's a red flag. That's definitely a red flag. Whereas if there's conversation back and forth, that's a green flag. That means that you've touched them in some way that it's prompted them to ask a question or make a comment.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thanks so much, Dave. I mean, one of the things that I use when I am talking or I'm doing training on feedback is I say feedback is a gift. Feedback is a gift that keeps on giving, whether it's good or it's bad. The point is, you can take that feedback and you can do something with it. You can either improve on it, what if it's good, and you can determine how you're going to address the challenge if it's bad. But zero feedback, you can do nothing with it. So feedback is a gift. So I like that approach. And so, Dave, we are at the end of our session. So sorry we ran out of time. Is there anything else that you would like to share? Anything else you'd like to share with us in terms of communication styles? Feel free.
Yes, particularly for leaders, is, as I said before, humans are complicated beasts. And if you don't get it right the first time, the second time, that's not a failure. It's just keep trying, be persistent, and keep learning. Because it's, being a leader of people is one of the most difficult things you can ever undertake. So there is no there is no if you just then everything will be okay playbook.
Yeah.
It's complicated and it's messy, and be genuine and just keep trying. That's all. That would be the biggest comment I could leave you with.
Great. Thank you so much, Dave. Thanks for your insights today. You've given us really some great practical strategies and reminded us that communication isn't just about speaking, it's about connecting, it's about engaging, and more particularly, it's not about you, it's about them. So that's a huge takeaway. So to our listeners, I hope you're walking away with some fresh ideas on how to adjust your communication style and strengthen the way you lead and collaborate. This has been the Align to Success podcast. I'm your host, Amoy Vanlo, and we'll see you next time.